Hi ATM fam, welcome back. This is Amber Elizabeth Cates. She's been missing for a great many years from Columbia, Tennessee. We're going to take a look at her case and maybe find some answers for her family. According to citytowner.com, Columbia, Tennessee in early spring is a modest town of brick storefronts and quiet neighborhoods that back up to fields and creek beds. The air is mild and high school students talk about plans for a few days of freedom before finals. On April 11, 2004, a 16-year-old named Amber Elizabeth Cates had a simple plan. She would leave her mother's residence on Tracy Lane, catch a ride with a friend, and spend part of the spring break with a relative. Now, we've all probably experienced spring break. A lot of teens go out of town. Some of them go to Florida to enjoy the beaches and so on. Personally, I never really went anywhere on spring break. I hung out with my, mom and dad and siblings at home and prepared for the last couple months of school. But Amber apparently was going to hitch a ride there with a friend, and the friend was going to take her out of town to a relative's house for part of her spring break. It's a plan that countless teenagers make, a plan that assumes tomorrow will look like today. But that tomorrow never arrived for Amber. What followed was a vanishing that has occupied her family and her community for more than 2 decades. Now, her disappearance has been classified by the authorities as her being a runaway, but her family and friends and others clearly believe that since she's not been heard of for that many years, that they suspect that there may be foul play involved, and that Amber was not a runaway but was taken by someone. Amber was a teenager with the mix of determination and vulnerability that marks that age. She was petite, about 5'5", weighed around 100 pounds. She had kind of light brown hair naturally, but a lot of times she dyed it blonde, and she had really vibrant and beautiful green eyes and a smile that her sister and friends still describe when they speak about her. Teachers and neighbors recalled a young person who was finding her voice, which is kind of the state for many of us at 16, who had hopes that stretched beyond the limits of a small town, which I can identify with. I grew up in a very small town, and my dreams for the future took me way beyond the borders of the area in which I lived, and who cared deeply about the people close to her. She was not perfect, as no one is at 16, or as far as I'm concerned, any other age, yet she was loved and known. In every account from those who knew her there, it's the same theme. She did not intend to disappear. She intended to live, to return from spring break, and to keep going. The home on Tracy Lane sits in a quiet patch of Columbia. Streets curve past one-story houses and small yards. The drive from Tracy Lane to the main corridors of town is short. Within minutes, a car can reach garages, convenience stores, and 2-lane roads that lead out toward the countryside. This geography matters because it shapes the window of opportunity that an offender might have had. It is not a place where long drives are required to change a scene. It's a place where a wrong turn onto a side street can hide a car for a while, where meeting in a driveway can move out of sight in seconds, and where an ordinary transfer from one vehicle to another would not draw a crowd. On the afternoon of April 11, 2004, Amber left her mother's home with the idea that she would be gone just a couple of days. Accounts agree that she got into a gold-colored Mazda driven by a male friend. The plan, as it was repeated later by those close to her, was simple. She would spend part of spring break with a relative, check in, and return. She did not have large amounts of money, she did not have a suitcase full of clothes, and she did not leave a note that suggested a long absence. What complicates the picture is what is said to have happened next. The friend reportedly handed her off to another man for a short ride. Now, I find that very suspicious. I find that very odd. It's creepy. I mean, you get into a car with a friend, someone presumably that you know well, and they drive a little while, and then he drops her off with a stranger for the rest of the ride to the relative's house. That makes no sense to me. I mean, I grew up when hitchhiking was popular, and there were all kinds of horror stories about getting in cars with strangers, so that by the time I was in my probably 20s or early 30s, hitchhiking was pretty much a thing of the past because it was so dangerous. Well, what's the difference between her getting into a car with a stranger and going somewhere? And why didn't the friend take her? If he wasn't going to be able to take her, then maybe she could have made other arrangements to get there if he wasn't going to be able to take her all the way. Anyway, she gets into this other car. She gets out of the gold Mazda, gets into another car with a man she doesn't know, and that second man later stated that he drove her to a garage in Columbia after a quick stop to buy hair dye, then left her there. After that, no one's been able to confirm an independent sighting. No camera caught her face, no clerk remembered a purchase that could be tied to her with any certainty. The known trail ends with the borders of her own town. So she's in a small town, gets in a car with a friend. Within minutes, if she's still within the town, he hands her off to a man she doesn't know. She gets in that man's car. He takes her to the outskirts, the very, very borders of the small town that she lives in to buy hair dye, and he drops her off at a garage. That makes no sense to me. This whole thing just makes absolutely no sense to me and is terribly frightening. When a teenager misses a check-in during spring break, some families wait a day to see if plans have shifted. In this case, the silence stretched just long enough to breed worry and then resolve. Family members called friends, drove routes that Amber would have known, and stopped at places where she might have been seen. I'm curious, was the relative she was going to spend time with over spring break in the same town? Was that person far, far away? Where was the relative? You don't have to name the relative to just mention how close the relative's house was to the family's house, because it seems like, she got into the car with her friend and then was passed off to the stranger, then was dropped off at a garage, allegedly all within the confines of this small town. So I wish I could find out where this relative lived in relation to this town. Law enforcement took the report and began the methods that form the backbone of any missing person inquiry. They interviewed the people who saw her last. They looked for time-stamped transactions. They canvassed along the short route between Tracy Lane and the garage area where she was said to have been dropped. With each day that passed, the chance of finding a simple explanation shrank. The gold Mazda matters not because it belonged to Amber, but because it was the vessel of her last confirmed movement. The friend who drove it, so this was Amber's car, I guess. the gold Mazda. But a friend was driving it, and she was in the passenger seat at one point. The friend who drove it placed her into the hands of another man. That second driver, obviously who they located, placed her at a garage. The story of that day depends upon the credibility of those two statements and, on the physical traces that might have been left in the vehicles or at the stop. In 2004, it was common to process seats and door pulls for prints and to collect fibers and any visible biological traces. If those items were preserved well, later techniques could still rescue meaning from them. In other words, DNA possibly, and maybe some other things. The shape of the car, the route it likely traveled, and the narrow time window between the pickup and the supposed drop-off form a puzzle that can be tested against phone records and fuel receipts. Every minute accounted for is a minute narrowed for opportunity. Now, there have been some theories over the years amongst members of the community. One suggests that Amber planned only a short visit, but fell into the hands of someone who saw a chance to isolate her and did so. Another suggests that she was passed between acquaintances who did not understand the gravity of what was happening until too late, and who then told partial truths to shield themselves from blame. A third, darker theory is that she was the victim of opportunistic violence at or near the place where she was last said to be, and that those responsible quickly moved her out of sight. There are variations on each idea, but they all turn on the same hinge. Two known drivers, a short urban route, and a sudden break in communication. The first week sets the tone for the months that follow. In that week, investigators either find footage that anchors the timeline or they do not. Witnesses either speak while memories are fresh or they do not. If an item is found that can be tested, it enters the chain of custody early or it risks being lost. In the case of Amber, the first week did not produce a sighting that could anchor the investigation to a single place and time. Without that anchor, every later reexamination has to rebuild the foundation before it can explore new angles. That is not a criticism of anyone who cared or searched. It's an explanation of how fragile the beginnings of a case can be. Amber's sister and extended family have kept her name present in the years since her disappearance. They have worked with local agencies and with national organizations that amplify missing person cases. Age-progressed images were created to show what she might look like as she grew into adulthood. Community events have been held to remind people that a child of Columbia once walked out of a door and did not return. This kind of advocacy matters. It shapes public memory, and it keeps pressure on those who may know a small piece and who have not yet found the courage to share it. From early on, the case was treated as endangered missing rather than a simple runaway. As time passed, no financial activity, no verified sightings, and no communication emerged. That posture hardened. The Maury County Sheriff's Office and the city police have had a continuing role. Federal partners took an interest, and a reward was offered for information that could lead to recovery or prosecution. The presence of a reward and a federal tip line can flush out people who otherwise would not come forward. It also signals to the community that the case remains open in a real sense, not just as a file on the shelf. Time is not always the enemy of a case. If the right items were kept, time can be an ally. Modern DNA techniques can work with trace amounts that would have been considered useless 2 decades ago. Touch DNA can sometimes reveal profiles from steering wheels, door handles, or belt latches. Advanced database searches can compare partial latent prints with a far wider pool than was available in 2004. Cell site records, if preserved, can be used with present-day mapping tools to create a far finer picture of phone movement on the day in question. Even if no single method delivers an answer, a combination of small insights can break a log jam. People change. Time softens loyalties. A person who could not speak in 2004 might be ready in 2025. A person who told a partial story might be ready to tell a complete one. For that reason, a careful re-interview of everyone who touched the chain of custody of Amber movements that day is valuable. So is a new canvas of the area framed by Tracy Lane. The roads used to reach the garage, and the streets immediately around any place that might match that description. Businesses change hands, but workers often stay in the same trades. Mechanics move from one shop to another. Someone who is present without realizing the significance might now connect a memory with a date because a friend mentioned the case. The disappearance of a child, and at 16, Amber was still a child to those who love her, does not fade because time passes. It remains a point of unfinished business for a town that prides itself on neighborliness. It challenges the belief that everything important that happens in a place is known by someone. It is a reminder that safety is not only about streetlights and patrol cars, it's also about the moral choices people make when they are the only witness to a small wrong act. When a town keeps speaking a missing person's name, it announces that harm will not be quietly accepted and that truth is still expected. Some cases are solved by science and some by conscience. This looks like a case that may require both. Someone knows what happened after Amber got into that second car. Someone remembers a stop that was not supposed to be a part of the day. Someone heard a story that made them uneasy and then chose to forget it. The invitation today is to do the opposite. Remember. Speak. If you once minimized what you saw because you wanted to believe the best about a friend, allow yourself to reconsider. If you were a young person and now you're a grown person, you are allowed to change your mind about what loyalty requires. The value of a life outstrips the value of a fragile friendship. On an April afternoon, a teenager stepped into a car and trusted she would be back in a few days. Her family set a place for her in their minds and waited. The waiting stretched into weeks and then into years. The facts we can place on a line are simple. She left home on Tracy Lane in Columbia on April 11, 2004. She was passed to another driver for a short ride. She was said to be dropped near a garage in town. After that, nothing can be confirmed. The story of Amber Elizabeth Cates is not finished. It is paused at a page that demands a new sentence. The next sentence can come from a lab bench or from a voice that has been quiet too long. When it comes, a family will be given an answer. It is earned through endurance, and a town will be able to say that it did not allow this name to fade into the background of its history. Now, during this video, you have seen pictures, including an age progression picture of Amber, and also a map of where the area from which she disappeared. Thank you to City Town for that great information. Now I'm going to turn to some information and summary from the Charlie Project. Again, she's been missing since 4/11/2004 from Maury County, Tennessee. She is classified as endangered missing. She's female, white. Her date of birth was 2/3/1988, which would make her 37 now. When she vanished, she was 16 years old, 5'5", 100 pounds. She left in a gold Mazda, which I believe belonged to her, but at that point was being driven by a friend and she was the passenger. It had the license plate number of Paul Frank Barney 200, PFB 200. She's a Caucasian female, again, light brown hair, which she often dyed blonde. She had green eyes, and Amber has fillings in 2 teeth. Again, her hair may have been dyed blonde. She left, the friend she left with was named Ronald Inzuriaga. He went by the nickname California. They were supposed to go get a meal at the Waffle House restaurant on James Campbell Boulevard. Authorities have since located Inzuriaga in a federal prison in Alabama. He said he dropped Amber off at a garage in Columbia, Tennessee. Now, this is different from the city-town thing. My mistake. Okay. She left her mother's home in the 2300 block of Tracy Lane with James Gordon, one of her friends, in a gold Mazda with a license plate number PFB 200. She was supposed to return in 2 days. Okay, James Gordon, left her with his friend Ronald California in Zuriaga. Okay, and then Amber and California were supposed to go get a meal at the Waffle House restaurant on James Campbell Boulevard. Authorities have since located California in a federal prison in Alabama. He said he dropped Amber off at a garage in Columbia, Tennessee after she purchased hair dye, and he doesn't know what happened to her after that. Besides her parents, she had an older half-sister, Brenda James, and Brenda has then stated that Amber had gotten involved with the wrong crowd and was drinking and occasionally using drugs. A few days before she went missing, her sister, Brenda James, had become her legal guardian. Again, she was originally considered to be a runaway, but now she is considered endangered missing. She has a driver's license, but there have been no infractions on her driving record, and her social security number has gone unused since 2004, and she hasn't used her cell phone either. Brenda believes her sister Amber is deceased, but if she's alive, she may be in Georgia or Texas, or she still may be in the Maury County area. So thanks to Charlie Project for some more details there. And I'm going to glance at what the FBI has to say. There's a reward of up to $25,000 being offered for relevant information leading to the recovery of Amber Cates or the prosecution of persons or a person responsible for crimes committed against Amber. If you have a tip concerning Amber Elizabeth Cates, contact your local FBI office or the nearest American embassy or consulate. I would say actually to call the Maury County Sheriff's Department at 931-380-5733 or 931-388-5151. I will put the Maury County Sheriff's Department and FBI information in the description box below this video. And again, if you know something, say something, please. Let's bring Amber home to her family. It's been a long time. It's been a little more than 21 years. She deserves to be laid to rest if she's deceased. And if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please share it on your social media for me. And if you would like to make a comment, you're more than welcome to. And whether it's a negative comment or a positive comment, please be respectful. I appreciate that. And until next time, take good care. Bye.